So it's a wrap on the 2021-22 NBA season, and it ends with a very familiar face on top of the basketball world, and that is the Golden State Warriors, who are your 2021-22 NBA champions. And I'm just going to get right to it. I'm not going to talk about, what the championship means for, obviously, Steph Curry, which I want to do a separate video on that topic, because I think this is finally the one championship where whatever little doubt there was or whatever questions you had about Steph's resume, which is, to me, was already ironclad and first ballot Hall of Fame, top 12 all-time great player great, is now just, you can't say anything else about Steph anymore. He's a top 10 player of all time. He's moved into that after last night, and his career is unassailable, and his greatness is unassailable. It was already unassailable to me, but for the remaining little bit of doubt left, this is the literally no one can say shit about me championship for Steph. So I'll get to that later. But I just want to talk about the series and what I saw, and then also later just talk about what it meant for the Warriors. So it really came down to two things for me. It came down to turnovers, which was a big theme heading into this series because both of these teams just had a propensity to turn the ball over. The Warriors just throughout their storied franchise history the last 10 years, they were just known to throw the ball away. That was kind of one of their trademarks. They're a great offensive team, a great team, one of the greatest teams of all time, but that was their one weakness. And the Celtics, of course, their barometer is the turnover. If they turn the ball over a lot, they are most likely losing. And if they take care of the ball, most of the times they have ended up winning in dominating fashion. And just as the series went along, it became more and more apparent that the Warriors were smartening up to the Celtics' drives. They knew how to defend Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The help defense, the last two games especially, in Game 6 last night and Game 5, were special. Draymond was special the last two games. Really, in the fourth quarter of Game 4, when Steve Kerr benched him, because at that point, Draymond was playing the worst series of his career, when he came back in, Draymond was effective. He had an effective last 3 minutes of the game, made a couple of key defensive plays in a very big Game 4 win, and even made a big assist to Kevon Looney to put the Warriors up 5 with about 50 seconds left. That kind of, I felt like, got Draymond going, and it really carried over into the last two games. And it's kind of the theme of the Warriors the last, obviously, since Steph was drafted, since the big three were put together with Draymond and Klay being drafted in 2012, is that all three of these guys just contribute to an all-time great team. They're an all-time great trio. Klay, even though he struggled to start the series, started to play better as the series went along. Played key defense on Jaylen Brown in Game 4, as I mentioned, in the fourth quarter. Early in the series, it did not look like Klay was up to the task defensively, trying to stay in front of Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But the last, Game 4, the fourth quarter, and then Games 5 and 6, he held up and made big shots. Yeah, Klay didn't shoot well, but Klay made big shots, like in Game 5, where the Celtics made their run in the third quarter, and Klay Thompson made a big three, I believe, to cut the Celtics' lead to 1, and made another three to keep the Warriors at least in striking distance with Boston while they were making their run. Klay made some big shots, and then, of course, as I mentioned, this is Steph Curry's crown jewel, but we're going to give Steph his own segment. But this is really just the MO for the Warriors, the big three, and then the strength in numbers. Great stories. Andrew Wiggins, Jordan Poole, Kevon Looney literally played every single game this year. All 82 games, every playoff game, has been solid as a rock, been switched in and out of the lineup throughout the playoffs based on the matchup. They thought he was going to be not as useful in the Memphis series, but then Looney starts and ends up changing the series and helps the Warriors close out the Grizzlies. And Looney's just solid screen setting. The Looney, Draymond, Klay, Steph, Wiggins lineup was like plus $1 million in this finals. Looney was an offensive rebounding demon. Gary Payton II came back from dislocating his elbow earlier in the playoffs and played a pivotal role in this final series. Steve Kerr finally found a lineup to where he can have multiple athletic defenders on the floor to try to match Boston's athleticism. And to me, going to the other side a little bit before I go back to the Warriors, because they are the champions, there was a combination of inexperience, I think a lack of a legitimate floor general point guard. And look, it's today's NBA. You don't necessarily need like a floor general like a prime Rajon Rondo or somebody like that, but you need somebody who has good feel for the tempo of the game, the flow of the game, how the game is going through each individual possession. And while I love Marcus Smart and I think his natural fitting position is point guard, I don't think he's a natural point guard. And you just saw at times when the Celtics unraveled in games, they kept making dumb mistakes like early shots in the shot clock, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown driving into a crowd, Jaylen Brown being loose with his handle, going back to the Miami series. It's funny because before the series, a lot of people were saying, well, Boston on paper is the better team. And I got what they were saying, but I never really ascribed to that because to me, being a better team, it encompasses everything, not just being the bigger and more athletic switchy team like Boston was. It's the smarts, it's the feel, it's the possession by possession basis, it's knowing what shots to take, it's when to dissect the defense in the half court offensively, it's when to take those shots. It's just the overall experience. I thought the Warriors were the better team. It was the Warriors' worst matchup, I thought, because Boston's defense did give Warriors problems. And at times in these finals, Boston had stretches where they just were damn right dominant. But at the end of the day, as the series went along, Steve Kerr just had more options to throw out there. He finally found the right combinations, and that's kind of the MO for the Warriors. They've always been a malleable team, and now they have finally found the forbidden Spurs jutsu and have tapped into something to where they could bridge this thing and be good for an even longer extended period of time. Because now you think about it, Jordan Poole played a role, but also Moody and Kuminga played key roles in the Western Conference Finals. They played real minutes. James Wiseman, if he could commit to something of a role like DeAndre Ayton did before last year's playoffs, if Wiseman is willing to condense his role and be that rim-running big, somebody that could catch everything around the rim and defend everything, I think that foundation would be good for Wiseman to build off of so we can later expand his game like he wants to down the road. If Wiseman is willing to accept that, of course, he's a young guy. I'm not going to put blame or praise on him either with whatever he wants. It's his career. But Wiseman might do good by condensing his role. My point is the Warriors just have a lot of young talent now to bridge this thing while the big three is still good. I think Klay being another season removed from those devastating injuries is only going to make him better. A lot of people were giving Klay crap this year because at times he just didn't look the same. He had rough shooting stretches. He didn't look right defensively. Well, duh, he had two of the most devastating injuries a basketball player could have back-to-back. A torn ACL and a torn Achilles. Those are like the death sentences type of injuries. Well, not the ACL as much, obviously, the last 30 years as surgery has gotten better. But the Achilles tendon. And Klay, I thought, looked relatively great given the circumstances. I thought he looked great. And now that he's going to be a year removed from that, next season Klay's going to be better. Draymond Green, for the first 30 or so games before he went down with injury, was the clear frontrunner for Defensive Player of the Year. Steph had that weird 2-month slump. It was the worst shooting slump of his career. but has still shown he could play at an MVP level. He's still a top 5 player, still one of the cream of the crop in terms of superstars. This Warriors team is going to be here for a long time, and I was high on the Warriors before the season. As proof of it, you could see my video from last August where I posed why the Warriors are contenders once again. It's just when you play this trio of Steph, Draymond, and Klay, they are tough to beat in a series. That's just it. And that was my belief heading into the year. It's like, we have one of the winningest trios of all time. They're healthy, or going to be healthy. Klay's coming back, but then Wiggins played better as last season, the year before this past season. Wiggins played better as that season closed. Jordan Poole came out of the G League and looked like a completely different player. Kuminga at times showed a lot of great flashes this season. Moody even started, like I said, played key minutes in the Western Conference Finals. This Warriors team has great coaching. Oh, by the way, coaching. Over the last 2 years, everybody was ragging on Steve Kerr. He's too stubborn. He's stuck in his old ways. Doesn't want to run a lot of pick and roll with Steph Curry when the roster wasn't as good. Well, Steve Kerr kept his philosophy, and the younger players developed and learned from it, and then carried it over to this season, and it's all led to a championship. And even when the Suns were going on their run, and I know I have the video of why the Suns should be considered the favorites because they just had a dominant regular season, I even said in that video, when push comes to shove, I'd probably lean Warriors in that series because I think it's a 50-50 shot. Because remember, Draymond went down with injury after the Warriors got off to a great start this season, and then the offense and the defense kind of tailed off a little bit. Steph was in a shooting slump. Then Klay comes back. Draymond got hurt when Klay got back. And then when Draymond came back, Steph a game later got hurt. And so the trio never really had a healthy season yet to play together. And by the time the playoffs rolled around, the big three was healthy and championship run. It's just an incredible testament to how well ran the Warriors are. And by the way, let me just say real quick, it's not a checkbook win. Checkbook win just discredits all the stuff that the Warriors have, one, gone through, and two, all the work they've put in to build this whole thing. Just because ownership wants to pay to keep their great team together. And that's not even before the Brian Windhorst comment, there were reports of owners complaining that the Warriors were just allowed to spend all this money. Well, guess what? You could spend the money too, other owners. If you're complaining about other owners spending money trying to keep their team together to make them more money, then maybe you shouldn't own a fucking NBA team anymore. How about that? Because there's a lot of cheap owners still in the NBA, Robert Sarver, that don't want to pay their good players. And they easily could. They easily could. And guess what? Joe Lacob is going to be paying a lot more luxury tax this summer too when he pays Jordan Poole. When he keeps Andrew Wiggins. Because Andrew Wiggins has, what a time to be alive. Andrew Wiggins was the second best player on a finals team. And I feel bad that I'm just now mentioning Wiggins as I realize I'm recording this video. But Wiggins was the second best player for the Warriors in this series. He had Jason Tatum in the 10th dimension of hell. He was a maniac on the glass, especially in games 4, 5, and 6. And whenever the Warriors, flow offense, their pick and roll with Steph, whenever that wasn't going and you just needed a bucket, and this is where Andrew Wiggins kind of separated himself from Harrison Barnes going back to the very first championship, and why the Warriors obviously got KD, who is an extreme version of this. The Warriors had somebody who can get you a bucket out of nothing when things broke down, when the motion flow stuff wasn't working, when Boston snuffed all that out. Andrew Wiggins provided key buckets for the Warriors, and the Warriors needed every bit of that, along with Wiggins' great defense. So shout out to Andrew Wiggins too, the second best player on a championship team, and it is not a joke or a meme. Great NBA season. I know I tailed off the last month or 2 months with my videos. Life has happened, but I am proud of the consistency that I tried to do this season. Got a lot more people subscribed to the channel, willing to listen to me talk hoops, so I appreciate every single last one of you. Be prepared for a lot of videos coming up. You know, obviously we got off-season, WNBA, the draft, and then, of course, you know, next season where it's going to be another fun year because more teams are going to get healthy, a la the Nuggets, the Clippers, and it's going to be another parody-written type of season, which I just love. So thanks for watching the channel. Stay tuned for more stuff.